we'll be looking at the state of the Nigerian economy and efforts being made to rejig it against the background of some underlying currents in reaction to some of the policies and programs initiated by the present administration. The organized labor, like we read this morning, is adamant in their dispositions to economic policies, particularly the removal of petrol subsidy that has really increased the cost of living. Many Nigerians can't fuel their vehicles anymore, and the palliatives are yet to come. We don't even know where they are, but some state governors are making efforts to bring forth palliatives, reducing the number of work days for the staff, just to ensure that they are able to cope. I have joining us from Lagos, a business and political analyst. I'd like to thank very especially Osilama Okufu. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. We also have joining us via Zoom from Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory, a former banker and an economic analyst, Idehe Ebonwoye. Thank you for joining us, Idehe Ebonwoye.
Good morning, Tony. Thank you for having me.
Okay, we have back here in the Benin Network studio a human rights and constitutional lawyer. I'd like to thank very especially Barrister St. Michael Egwauge. Thank you for joining us, St. Michael.
Thank you, Sonny Duke. Thank you for having me.
Okay, let me begin with you, Osilama. We've seen just mere statements coming forth from Mr. President, the effect it has brought to bear on the economy. But we know that from records, it wasn't this present administration that removed fuel subsidy. The present administration just lapped on what has been done or what was done by the previous administration of President Muhammadu Buhari. But let's find out from you, what in your opinion are we not doing right in terms of rejigging the economy against the background of the impact that is already making the tolls it's having on the Nigerian citizens?
Okay, once again, thanks for having me, and good morning, Nigerians. Like you rightly pointed out, the policy that is biting hard on Nigerians right now, most specifically the removal of the fuel subsidy, as announced by the President during his inauguration, was actually not the policy thrust of this present administration. Like we all know, as at the end of June, that subsidy regime would have actually ended. But in any case, like you say, governance is a continuum. And I guess this government didn't have a choice but to follow through with that policy put in place by the last administration. And in any case, too, I don't think if it wasn't this president, it was any other president that they would have continued with that policy, because it wasn't sustainable. A situation where you have an economy, a government that was borrowing to pay salaries, it just didn't make any sense to any right-thinking person. On the issue of what should be done to rejig the economy, I think certain moves, signaling, as we say in economics, have been made. First off, now the government has rightly, in my view, put an end to the subsidy regime. Now, on the issue of palliative, I personally don't think we should begin to start running a welfare system of the government. Like I've adduced in some of the platforms that have been asked this question, I think what Nigerians need to do to a very large extent is apply some measures of their own structural adjustment, just like we had in the SAP regime of former President Babangida during his military era. I have always advised, as a person, as a family, we need to look back, step back, because cost of living has increased. And what can only happen from there, given the fact that income levels have not improved, is that you're still not living with tea. So to avoid that is for you to now look back, looking inwards, look at what your spending nature is right now as an individual and as a family, and cut out certain things that if you don't consume them, if you don't use them, you will not die. Because that is where we are right now. I do believe that since the government is looking at revitalizing our essentially non-existent or inoperative refineries, and again, certain licenses have been given to some organizations, some companies to import fuel, which I think is maybe like a short-term measure.
Okay.
I think now, if the interplay of demand and supply comes into play, those economic forces, eventually the price of these the petroleum product will dip because there will be competition. It's not going to be immediate because, again, the cost of importing these items is not cheap right now because of the exchange rate. But if we get it right with dropping, given the fact that now we do not have two exchange rates, the parallel market and it has been collapsed essentially, into the CBN rates. Okay. Now, if that is done, and this the issue of rent seeking, a situation where to a large extent the market forces, again, like I said, comes into play, and then the interest rate dips over time. It means that the cost of importing this item, of course, will drop. But I think the most critical part for me is for us to revamp our refineries, get them working again. And then, because the product is sourced locally, and then, of course, essentially, production cost will dip. But of course, it's our product. We have it. Of course, then it essentially means that the cost of purchasing this item, by the end users.
All right. So I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you in a moment, Mr. Kofu. Let's get you have your buys into our conversation now. Idehe and Bonyi. We are faced with the stark realities of these economic policies, and the organized labor is threatening to go on strike. The palliatives are yet to come, but even if the palliatives do come, I'm not very sure they will have much impact, because we also need to look at the productive capacity of the local environment as it relates to what is happening in the international market, as it relates to demand and supply with petroleum product, particularly fuel. Let's get your take on what model suits the strategies being adopted to deal with this challenge.
Well, Sonny, thank you very much. We're faced with this quagmire again. I remember I've spoken extensively on the nature of my economy. I remember I told you a long time ago that Nigeria is a very poor country, but has the potential to be very rich. But because of the mismanagement and not following of policies by subsequent governments, we're also find ourselves in this quagmire. It's like we're going round circles. Yes, I agree to an extent with Osinama on some areas he spoke to. But if you look at it holistically, we are dealing majorly with two major challenges. We're talking about Naira and
for subsidy,
taking away subsidies. If I speak to those two narratives as proposed by the present administration, it's not a bad idea, looking at it from an economic standpoint.
Okay.
If you look at first, let me look at taking floating of the Naira. When you float the Naira, what it means is that you're asking the Naira to compete favorably with other foreign currencies. And when you do that, there are some other factors you have to take into consideration and what affects those floating of the Naira. Like, for instance, you have to deal with the inflation rates, you have to deal with interest rates, you have to talk about balance of trade, which has to do with yes, subsidy, we all know that Nigeria is a mono economy. Majorly get our revenue from crude. And since we've taken away subsidy, it's given an avenue for government to also be able to kind of like do a lot of savings. But the challenge we have with that is that subsequently, government has not been very disciplined in terms of this fiscal part of managing resources, in terms of corruption and all of that. So when you talk about floating in naira and talk about a lot of benefits and also comes with a lot of challenges.
Okay.
Floating in naira is good. It allows naira to have compete with other foreign currencies, thereby also giving investors an opportunity to come into Nigeria and invest.
Okay.
What is the economy is what is meaningful, creating the necessary environment which the government has to contend with, and when investors come in, they're able to create invest here, create jobs, and all of that. That will also now like grow the economy and enhance the livelihood of Nigerians. But the challenge we have looking at our environment in terms of this policy is that you will notice that when the naira was floated, at a point in time it was about 500 to a dollar. But as at Saturday, it was about 760 or thereabout to a dollar. So that also gives room for local production to have challenges in terms of sources for raw materials, because most of the raw materials that are being used are not normally gotten here in terms of manufacturing, in terms of engineering equipment, parts, and all of that. So that is also a challenge that manufacturing industries are also having here. When you look at that, looking at it holistically, it's going to be a huge challenge in the sense that we are more of an export-dependent nation. So what government needs to do, if they need to make a headway, is the resources that they are getting from taking away the oil subsidy should be channeled into critical infrastructures. Like you noticed, like the manufacturing industries, when they had a seminar recently, they had challenges with availability of funds, talk about financing, talk about interest rates. Recently, the CBN increased the interest rate by 5.5 basis points from 18.50% to 18.75%. That would increase the lending rate from banks to these investors, and that will also impact on cost of production. So basically, government has to work cut out for them, but if they can be true to themselves by being prudent, look at the fiscal side of it, because to me it's absurd when you say, look at what happened recently when they started by saying they were going to give 8,000 naira to 12 million households. Yeah. It's about 60 billion naira.
Yeah.
Because what is smart, to collaborate with smart said, you can be funding consumption, rather than should be funding production.
Okay.
Then also like the fiscal aspect of it, in terms of expenditure, you are expensing about 70 billion to just about 409 persons in the National Assembly. When we're having challenges with borrowing, today our borrowing has got to about close to 77 trillion naira, both foreign and domestic, and our debt servicing in terms of revenue to debt ratio is about 96% of our revenue. So this government has worked cut out for them.
Okay.
I believe that the policy is not so bad, but the problem and challenge we have is that the government is not being able to carry the populace along. Government has to communicate properly with people and come out with clear-cut objectives on how they want to run the administration. You asked the question about looking at labor.
Yeah.
Yes, those are the areas we spoke about, because uncertainty and transparency has to be top-notch.
Let me just pause you there. Yeah, I'll come back to you in a moment. Barrister St. Michael, you'll be itching to say something with the state of the economy and the planned strike by the organized labor. And you say you can't blame them.
I honestly cannot blame labor for taking this hard stand.
Okay.
Because Ajero and Osifo are under pressure, to take, decisive action in the interest of the hoi polloi, the plebeians, and the suffering masses.
Okay.
Because we are the one, bearing the brunt of, the harsh economic realities. I am not an economist, but I have listened, to, several economists. The preponderance of opinion, supports the approach or the idea that this administration is, implementing at the moment, as corroborated by our two guests.
Okay.
Mr. Osila Mahufu and Mr. Iden. But the problem is, if we realize that we have, a seismic economic challenge that requires a surgical operation, such as floating the naira and removal of, subsidy on a commodity which constitutes, the life wire of our entire living.
Yeah.
One will expect that the government ought to take off, palliative measure.
First.
First of all,
okay.
To cushion, the harsh effects arising from the implementation of, this, surgical approach. I believe that, the inflexible insistence on the curative in the form of, a surgical operation without adverting your mind to the palliative,
okay.
So as to, cushion the harsh effect arising, from this surgical process, could prove fatal, to the patient in attendance.
Okay.
As we speak at the moment, we all, expend about 65 or 70% of our income on transportation only. I know what it took me to drive from our end, to this place this morning. If I have an alternative means of transportation, that is affordable and that is conscious of time, I would have parked my vehicle at home and joined the vehicle. These are some of the suggestions being made,
okay.
By labor at the moment. Labor is saying, that you cannot float the naira, remove subsidy when the wages are still stagnant. The income of those that belong to the informal sector of the economy, it's almost, stagnant as well. The opportunities, for generating, fund and income at the moment is almost, non-existent.
Absolutely.
So if you combine it, with, what we have on ground at the moment, it will lead to, frustration. And that frustration could be, expressed in violence. It could be, expressed in the form of looting and other form of criminality, such as what you are saying right now in Adamawa State.
In the warehouse.
The Adamawa saga is a pointer to the government, telling them that, it has become imperative for the government to move beyond the realm of platitude and begin to walk the talk. Because what I hear at all times is, we will do this, we will do that. We will do this, we will do that. And the pain, the excruciating pain
continues.
Continues. It has lingered, for more than 2 months unabated. And you are telling us, to be patient. You are telling us to tighten our belt. Is the government tightening their belt? The government continue, the cost of governance has not reduced. The lifestyle, of the political class is still lavish. It's stupendous. You know, you come out on the streets and you see, you know, this political class move around with endless, convoy, entourage, vehicles that are fueled at the expense of taxpayers' money. You know, the other day I see Governor Stock, you know, at along you know, Saple Road at a spot he has refused to, to
that's the federal road, by the way.
I know.
Yes.
But however, you know, the government has a duty, you know, to, you know, ameliorate the suffering of the users of that road, because the people that are using that road are not from the moon.
Okay.
Are not from the space.
Right.
They are Edo indigenous.
Let me
the government has a duty, you know, to respond, you know, to the plight of the people. That's
I agree with you absolutely. But let me pause you there. Osilame, let's come to you now. There's always this talk about the government implementing international financial institutions, monetary policies without really a recourse to the realities on the ground. I know for a long time the World Bank, the IMF, and several international institutions, they've talked about Nigeria removing fuel subsidy. It's finally been removed. We also had the counter problem of floating naira. But local production is weak. Our abilities to have more export than import is weak. All of that is putting a lot of pressure on the naira. Fuel that we're even talking about is still being imported as we speak. What's your take on all of these as challenges bedeviling the country with the new government in place? New ministers are expected to come on board. We're looking forward to that. Organized labor is adamant on going on strike. Let's get your take on all of this in the next few minutes.
Thank you so much. The reality is the reality. Yes, the International Monetary Fund and some of our foreign creditors, and even some governments have advised over time, for decades now, really, that the subsidy regime is not sustainable. And I agree. What you have essentially has been a rent-seeking situation where you have few people who suddenly become billionaires, flying going around in private jets, and you don't see anything substantial that you can point out and say, this is the reason why this person is this affluent. And there's no way we could have continued with that. The same thing equally does Taylor apply, you know, in the foreign exchange markets, you know. So the question therefore is, should we continue along that path, that trajectory, or to take a bold and decisive measure such that we'll feel some pain, but knowing that at the end of the day, if, I mean, all things being equal, under a category parity situation now, if all things are properly done, I mean, we will all be the beneficiaries for it. I initially talked about getting our refineries back on track. If we do that, we have at least 4 refineries in this country. We are not working. So that is again, you now saying our manufacturing sector is essentially comatose. Yes, it is, because you know, the cost of running a manufacturing setup, for example, in this country is very high. Not just you're not just talking of fuel usage now. What about diesel?
Okay.
So the energy implication is quite high. So I do agree that labor does have every justification to be angry, be adamant, insisting that because they want to work strike. But what I want to say is this: finally, that first subsidy regime has been turned into the dustbin. So why don't we give this government some slack, you know, to see if they do things differently. We shouldn't just assume that it's going to be business as usual. Whatever monies that are going to be saved, frittered away, or the usual corruption comes into play. Let us understand that the government has come on to say we have saved X amount of money in hundreds of millions of naira, which is good. So the question we should not be asking ourselves is what do we do? How do we apply the savings that should have gone into private pockets? Right? Now the government has equally said there's a likelihood that they will increase the minimum wage to 200,000 naira. I don't know if that is true, but I read it somewhere. Okay. It shows that there's a thinking along the line that, okay, things are rough, things are tough for the people who make the economy go round. But in the same vein, if we have been able to save a certain amount of money and it's going to increase in quantum, it means that we should start applying some of those monies, not just to infrastructure development, but also to salaries and wages. You know, so you are talking about recurrent expenditure, you are talking about capital expenditure, and for an emerging and developing economy, I don't think it's a wrong way. It's a wrong way to go. Okay. So my advice really is that Labour needs to give this government some slack, some space. Okay. Give them the benefit of a doubt, and then let's see how things will pan out based on what the government has said they are going to do.
Okay, I'll pause you there, Osilama, in a moment. I thank you very much again for your time with us. But let me quickly go to Idehe and Moi. We're here now, and the emphasis is on what options do we have to get out of the woods. The ministerial nominee list has been sent to the Senate. Today's screening starts. We don't know who is going to get what portfolio. And that seems to be a very critical issue in dealing with it. We also have several special advisors appointed already. How do you factor all of these in as part of the strategies and structures being put in place by the present administration to deal with the economic realities of the countries at the moment?
Thank you, Sonny, once again. I'm listening to the man from Labour and Osilama. I think the major challenge we have as a country is we're not being true to ourselves, especially our leaders. When they make policy statements and they give projections over time, we've seen that those projections have not been met. You and I know in this country that the former Minister of State for Petroleum, Ibe Kachu, told us that our refineries will be up by 2019 to 2023. And what's the state of those refineries? Nigeria is the sixth largest producer of crude oil. And today, we're not refining crude, but we're importing crude, which also affects floating of the naira, because those crude oils, those petroleum products are not bought in naira, they are bought in dollars. So, and secondly, when Osilama talked about that the price of crude would most likely fall because of competition, I beg to differ. Nigeria does not control the price of crude. The price of crude is controlled by the international market. And as at yesterday, the price of crude has increased to $83 per barrel. So apparently, looking at the market forces, the market, the price of petrol might increase further, more than where it is today, as at 617. So if you look at what Labour is saying yes, you're going to increase salaries. When you increase salaries, you're not going to increase salaries everything. You're going to increase salaries to a particular point. And what if this price goes up? Another thing that we have to look at is when the crude that we're talking about today that has gone up, which is also affecting the price of petrol, which is as a result of the Russia and Ukraine war. By the time that war goes up, the price of crude most likely might drop, because when Usman talked about all things being equal, in economics, we always wish all things to be equal, but we know that things are not always equal. There are certain factors that are not controlled by man, and there are some that are controlled by man. Okay. If you look at our GDP in the first quarter of last year, our economy was growing, was in the minimal dimension, but because of the cashless policy, that also drew us back, because Nigeria is a cash-driven economy. We lost some traction there. Okay. So government needs to be very responsible. We are facing very difficult times. For me, I expected this government to have put in place the ministers, because that's the ones that will drive the policy of government. It's over close to 70 days now before we screen ministers, before they'll finish and they will now sit in their various ministries, which we do not even know who will be in the ministries. We're all doing what we're doing is guesswork. We're looking at based on their profile.
Yeah,
on them to their various ministries. That will linger for a while before this government will now sit down and start facing.
I'm sure that's why Osilama is saying we need to give the government some slack, give them some space to.
The economy.
Yes.
Economy doesn't need any time wasting anymore.
Okay.
We are facing challenges, and investors look at perception. They do not look at the rule of the law. So government needs to sit down and look at issues critically.
Okay.
There are investors to come into Nigeria, for example. So, Sonny, when we are speaking about the economy, there are smaller environmental factors that you must consider. The rule of law is very important for investors to come into the country and invest. He looks at the body language. What is the rule of law? Today you have the CPN governor suspended and charged. Initially we heard that he was going to be charged for money laundering and terrorism, but only for him to be charged for possession of firearms. What is that? What's the optics?
Okay, Idea, let's just come back to the subject. I'm coming back to Vice St. Michael Egwago is with me in the studio. I'll come back to you in a moment, Idea. I'll come back to you in a moment if we still have the time. Yes, Vice St. Michael. Like I asked a few minutes ago, we are here now. What needs to be done, must be done to take Nigeria out of the woods. I don't know how much of engagement the government of the day is going to do to assuage the feelings of labor to avoid the planned strike. But let's get to take along those lines.
I agree with my brother, Osilama Hufu, that we should give the government some slack. But the question is, for how long? The government is not communicating.
Government is just 2 months or thereabout old, yeah.
For how long?
Yeah.
For how long?
Yes.
You won't tell somebody is in the hospital bed complaining of pain, and you are telling the person bear it, just continue to bear it without giving that
medication,
patient, some palliative pill, to cushion that pain, and you keep telling the person that person may die of that pain. He may just die. That's the situation we find ourselves at the moment. Mr. Sonny Duke, I must tell you that this is the most horrific moment to be a Nigerian. The most difficult time, to be a citizen of this country. It has never been this bad.
But we survived we survived 8 years of...
Do you know how much it takes now to travel from here to my village in Agenebude? It has increased at a geometric rate. If you go to my village right now, do you know what the people there are passing through? They can barely feed. Because the cost of commodities in the market have skyrocketed beyond their control. Transportation has increased. Food is increasing. The discourse are threatening to increase electricity tariff. Schools, public schools, are increasing tuition fees because government has stylishly, quietly, and nicodemously withdrawn subvention to the schools. I think the government is biting too much.
Okay.
Their mouth is too full. You can't bite too much at a time.
Okay.
They say they are hitting the ground running. I think they are running too fast.
Okay.
Those of us they are supposed to carry along, we are far behind, gasping for breath. Government should do something.
Okay.
It is time, it has become imperative to move beyond the realm of platitude.
Okay.
And begin to walk the talk.
All right, Osilama, just give us your final take as we conclude our conversations on the state of the Nigerian economy and the planned strike by the organized labor. What's your final take? I heard someone talked about the challenge that goes with foreign investors who may also leave the country. I know that was something that was very characteristic of the present administration under President Muhammadu Buhari. Just in a minute, give us your final take.
Okay, well, I think the critical question we're going to ask ourselves how much of those foreign investors do you have right now in Nigeria? Not much. That is a fact. But the most important thing for me really is what are our expectations by way of setting policy measures that this foreign government put in place. I will attract foreign investors back into Nigeria. And that is how this economy is going to go. Two critical things. Corruption has been the biggest bane of Nigeria.
Yeah.
And then the will of government. If foreign investors observe that the government in place, or any government anywhere in the world, is serious about tackling corruption, plugging wastages, and following through with policy measures that are suggested locally and even internationally by our development partners, they will come in. Because we have the markets, we are a huge population.
Okay.
And that is critical.
Okay.
So that is for me. It's not so much about those that are big. We don't have much of them right now.
Okay. All right.
Mostly,
Usilama, let me pause you there, and I appreciate you very much for your time. And I hope very soon we'll have you on set again to look at some of these issues as they emerge. Thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Okay, then let's get a final word from you as we go on a descent on today's package of TMI. Yes, final word from you.
We are stuck with the situation we have now, so basically we have to look at solutions. Government needs to look at CNG as a means of alternative to fuel. The subsidy they are talking about should be channeled towards that, because if you look at 65% of our local economy is run by petrol. If you set to give palliatives in terms of enhancing vehicles with CNG gas, that would also be some form of a palliative rather than giving out cash handouts, which would enhance and increase inflation. So government should be prudent. Government should be very prudent, and most of the infrastructures that government must invest in must be infrastructures that would drive the economy. It is not for you to say you are building roads, building bridges. There has to be what you call cost-benefit analysis on every project that needs to be done. And apart from those by the federal government, must also look at the subnationals. Let's not forget that recently their revenue has increased, and we need to put an eye on them on how those revenues can also affect the people in their various states.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Idehe Ebowoyi. Thank you very much. Pastor Michael. Yes. Final take on this.
My final take is that this government should...
And just by the way, we have a video, an interview with the Nigerian ambassador to Australia, giving us his perspective on the chances of the Super Falcons in the ongoing Women's World Cup. We'll be bringing you that clip in a moment, but let's get a final word from you.
The government should quickly, and critically examine the demands of the organized labor and quickly respond to these demands.
Okay.
These demands are laudable and they will help to cushion, the existing...
What are these demands?
The CNG.
Okay.
It then, espoused some of it at the moment.
Okay.
Look at the CNG, wage award.
Yeah.
And put up structure, that will, lead to the emergence of, social incentive. These are not difficult to do. Government cannot tell us that they don't have the money to implement, these demands. Okay. Because recently we had that the money they share from FAC in the month of June is the highest in the history of this country.
So where's the money?
What it means is that revenue has increased tremendously, and so the government have the capacity to respond to the demand of the organization.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time with us on the program, TMI on the ITV network. Usilama Okwufo joined us via Zoom from Lagos. Thank you so much for your time. We truly appreciate the conversations on the show.
Thanks for having me.
It's beautiful. Thank you so much. And of course, Idehe Ebowoyi also joined us via Zoom, but from Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. Thank you so much, Idehe, for your time.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, with me in the studio, the erudite Barrister St. Michael Gwauge. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.